Morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is 10 o'clock, so we will get started. Welcome to today's meeting of Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Today's date is Friday, the 23rd of July, and I'm Councillor Tina Clement, your chair today. We have got a sizable agenda, so we will get cracking. Firstly, with apologies, Jonathan.
Have apologies, Chairman, from Councillor Hussain.
We also have apologies from Philippa Haddon. Are there any further apologies to report, members? No, I think we're all here, aren't we? Yeah. Okay. Item 2, are there... Oh, sorry, I forgot to say that this meeting is being webcast live, so make sure you behave yourselves. Are there any declarations of interest? I've not been given any in advance of this meeting, so if you feel that there's something on the agenda that you need to declare an interest in as we go along, Councillor Flunder.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether it's a declaration of interest or moral support or whatever else, but myself and Simon Tagg were the two chairs of the all-party working groups, one of which is being presented to you today. So I just thought I'd let the committee know that that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Flunder. That's been recorded. Just as well, gentlemen, if you want to remove jackets, it is a little bit warm in here this morning, so feel free to take your jackets off. I came without one, so I didn't need to remove it. Some of you have already took that option. Thank you. Item 3, minutes of meeting held on the 11th of June 2021. Are we happy that I sign those off? Councillor Hutton?
Sorry, Chair. Table 3, in Highways and Built County Economic Infrastructure and Skills, in the topic, we've got Safer Roads Partnership, Enforcement and Future Partnership working twice as a 3 and a 4. I wonder if that was an oversight. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's just been duplicated, Councillor, so we'll look at that when we go for the work programme. Thank you. Are we all happy for me to sign those minutes? All those in favour? Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 4, which is HS2 and impact on prosperity in Staffordshire quarterly update. Oral report of Cabinet Member for Economy, Skills and Presentation by HS2. So we've got Sarah Mallons and Tim Hemmingsley who are coming in online, I believe. Over to you guys. David, did you want to start? Sorry.
Good morning, Chairman. Morning, everybody. Yeah, as we are aware, this is HS2, and what we've done is we're giving you an update and holding the HS2 staff to account, which is what we're bringing here today. So hopefully we've got Jonathan Lord, who is the interim head of engagement for Phase 1 North, and Jason Pacey, head of the stakeholder and community engagement for Phase 2A. They're going to give an update on the prosperity side, focusing on what the contractors are doing on the ground in terms of business support. They'll be able to give an update on how many Staffordshire businesses are employed on HS2 and how they intend to increase that number in collaboration with the council itself. They're also going to be providing a summary of apprenticeships within a case study. And as you probably remember, they're attending the Prosperous approximately quarterly and will provide additional detail on any item on request, bringing in the appropriate specialists as needed. And I'll now hand over to Sarah. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, everyone. Just very quick from me. I'm going to just hand straight over to Jason and John to get on with their presentation if they're happy to do so. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name's John Lord. I'm Interim Head of Engagement for HS2 Phase 1, which covers Staffordshire, and I'll introduce you to Jason Pacey, my colleague, as well.
Good morning, all. Thanks very much for the invite for coming along. I'm Jason Pacey, and I fulfil the role of Head of Community and Stakeholder Engagement from the interface with Phase 1 near Lichfield, right the way up into Crewe, so Phase 2A.
Okay, we have a number of slides which I don't intend to go through verbatim because I understand they've been shared with members of the committee in advance. So rather than deliver lots of slides and lots of a full presentation, I will just highlight some of the key messages from in terms of the delivery of the project within Staffordshire for both phases, then a focus on the economic benefits for the county and an opportunity for members to ask questions as well. So I'll share my screen if I may and share my slides. Can everyone see that? Is that visible?
Yes, it is, John.
Super, thank you very much. We introduced ourselves. Quick overview. I'm pretty sure that everyone knows about HS2 in terms of how the project will be delivered in 3 different phases and the reasons behind it in terms of delivering more capacity, in terms of delivering and spreading economic growth and supporting the government's levelling up agenda across the UK. I won't go into too much detail on that, but obviously that's the context to how we're building the project. And within Staffordshire, there are 3 phases that are relevant in terms of Phase 1, which is the Acre to Euston versus the via the West Midlands, and Phase 2A, as Jason will talk about in more detail, and then the Phase 2B Western leg, which links the West Midlands up to the northwest and beyond. So again, that's a bit of an overview in terms of HS2. In terms of the delivery of the Phase 1 works, the focus has been very much on, since Royal Assent in 2017, which gave us permission to build and operate the railway, has been on the early work. So this is basically in terms of as you'll be aware, construction has been divided into enabling works, which has been delivered by a joint venture, Langer, Rourke, Murphy, across Staffordshire for Phase 1. And then the main civil works, which is being delivered by another joint venture, Balfour Beatty Vaughanchi. So LM's works have been very much focusing in Staffordshire around the preparation works, the vegetation clearance, the planting of replacement habitats and trees, the archaeological work as well, utility diversions, and early traffic and highway works as well to facilitate the start of main works. The key headline is for moving forward is that LM's enabling works will start to complete, and the main works undertaken by Balfour Beatty Vaughanchi will then start to grow in prominence across Phase 1 in Staffordshire. Utilities have been a big significant issue for us to address. There's lots of utilities to be moved in preparation for the construction of High Speed 2, and this has been one of the main features again of the preparation works, and this will continue over the next year or so up and down the line of Phase 1 route in Staffordshire, and that gives an indication of the extent of some of the works that are planned. An example there is a very specific piece of work in Hints in the southern section of Staffordshire towards Tamworth, and again some of the works there that were being undertaken by Cadent in terms of gas works in preparation on behalf of HS2 gives an indication of the extent of the works on the ground. Just a bit of a flavour in terms of what the works looks like. Again, for Balfour Beatty Vaughanshire for the next, the remainder of this year and the start of next year, there'll be still further ground investigation surveys along the line of route. So this is something that we'll be focusing on to make sure that that influences how they deliver the main work structures. There's further utility surveys to continue. We mentioned that before in the utility diversions. The big piece of work, or the big focus, is to mobilise in terms of their sites in preparation of the main build starting, and this will be seen on the ground in Staffordshire for phase 1 in terms of new accesses, the continued setup of compounds up and down the line of route for phase 1, continued site clearance, and obviously drainage utility works. Demolition in terms of buildings that are within the HS2 footprint will continue as well, and there are a number of those along the line of route within Staffordshire phase 1. And as members who represent the area, they will be aware of the works that have been undertaken to deliver the significant Cappers Lane main compound, and the works to complete that to start delivery from there will continue for the remainder of this year. The slides here give a flavour in terms of the nature of the works over the next 6 months or so, a bit more of a focus based on specific areas of Staffordshire for phase 1. One of the key also pieces of work that Balfour Beatty Vaughanshire will be starting is the creation of the haul roads, and these are a real significant feature of how they're delivering their works, and this is where their construction vehicles will be primarily using to take vehicles mostly off the existing highway network in Staffordshire to reduce our impacts on the local community and highway. So these are the mean or significant pieces of work to try and reduce our impact as much as we can do as we build the line of route within Staffordshire phase 1. So again, just quickly going over these slides. As I said, these slides have been submitted, and I don't intend to go through these in too much detail today. A bit of a focus on the A515 Acre compound. Again, looking at what needs to be done to deliver the compound here off the A515, including a new access point. And you can see the start there of the pink line, the creation of the haul road, in parallel with the trace or the line of route of High Speed 2, and the location in purple of the compound there. So again, an indication of what that looks like and the work that's required to deliver that. Works have now started with the Bellmouth junction to allow the access, and again the concrete slab to actually allow the office and welfare units to be on there from there. So again, an example of the layout of a compound there that gives an example of the activities that will be delivered from there. I'll stop now. Just want to do a bit of a plug for members and for the community as well. We publish on our community website for Staffordshire, HS2 in Staffordshire, a forward look of construction in terms of Staffordshire phase 1, and this sets out, again, very similar briefing or similar update with a bit more detail over a 6-month overview of what construction will look like and what areas that we'll be focusing on. And this is a really useful document to download and have a look at. So again, that also can be used in parallel to these slides. So I'll hand over now to Jason to talk about 2A, if I may.
Thanks, John. So for me, the kind of the main message that I'm kind of hoping to get across with the slides and the information to share is about the program for phase 2A and where we are and how we are aligning it with an end date with phase 1. But also the contractor delivery model and how that differs to what you'll have experienced so far from for phase 1. So, John, if you would move to the next slide, please. Just a simple overview of the 2A route through Staffordshire. There's a few headlines in the blue box there about the key elements that to do with the route, and you'll be familiar, I'm sure, with the 4 community areas within Staffordshire itself, so community areas 1 through to 4. If we go to the next slide. So this represents the overarching programme for phase 2A. Key things to highlight. Royal Assent was achieved in February, pretty much 4 years following phase 1 receiving Royal Assent. So essentially we're 4 years behind phase 1, but the critical part here is that we are due to open phase 2A at the same time as phase 1. So there's a clear acceleration of activity that's needed, which is one of the key drivers for the different operating or contractor delivery model that we're going to be using. A few of the headlines there to do with the early work starting summer of this year, and then the main construction works 2 years later, testing, commissioning, and then, as I say, the operational railway around about the middle of 2031. And if we go to the next slide, John, please. This slide gives you an overview of the next 3 years. It identifies quite clearly we've got a staggered start. We've got utility work starting this summer, and then environmental works in the autumn, and then into next year for the early civils. So it just gives you a flavour for the next couple of years. Now I'll go into a bit more detail about what the activity itself is. So if we go to the next slide, John, please. So I mentioned at the outset that we're running a different delivery model on phase 2A. So this is the early work. So as John mentioned, Lang Murphy joint venture LMJV have been delivering the enabling works on phase 1. So it's been a single contract, as it were. The difference on phase 2A is that we have broken the enabling works up into several key parcels. So you can see them identified there on the graphic. So we've got ground investigation activity, which has been happening now since autumn of last year, and will go through towards the end of this year. This involves route-wide ground investigation of around about 1,300 locations. This sort of activity involves drilling of boreholes and digging of trial pits. The next circle around the early environmental works. So this will kick off autumn of this year and run through to around about the middle of 2024. So the main thrust of this work, the early environmental works, is to create new habitats into which species can be translocated when the main work starts. So we're talking about mitigation ponds, wetlands, hedgerows, grasslands, woodlands, creation of all those sorts of landscapes and habitats. There'll also be some further archaeological investigation included within that contract. And then as we move around the circle, we get to the early civils works. They're due to start summer of next year and run for around about 2 years. And they have 3 key elements to them. One is the improvement works at junction 15 of the M6, so Hanchurch interchange. The other is the widening of Woodland Lane and the improvements around the junction with Tunel's Lane down in the south of the route. And the third, which is outside of Staffordshire, but nevertheless, it's the improvement works or the mitigation measures we're installing in the village of War. So those are the 3 contracts that will be let first. They have all been let, and they've all been appointed to Balfour Beatty. So as a single contractor with separate teams, they're all running those contracts. And as we move around to the early civils works 2, this is the next contract, which was recently awarded to Kia, due to start in the autumn of next year and run to the end of 24. The main elements of this piece of work are the construction of the bridge and the slip roads onto the M6 around the Arnfield Lane area of Stone. And then there are around 20 locations where we're doing off-route road improvements. And then there's a whole range of additional surveys that will be carried out as part of that contract. So the team came on board around about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so we're just mobilising at the moment for that contract. And then the final 2 bubbles on the graphic, environmental surveys, which are ongoing and have been for some time or will continue for a while. So these are mostly ecological surveys. And then we've got the final one in the grey bubble, which is utility diversions. So this typically, things like the overhead line diversions, water, sewerage, telecoms, gas and oil. These are already underway. The first one started down in the south, so that's the Kings Bromley 400 kV overhead line diversion, which is being delivered by National Grid. So that's the phase 2A early works. If we go to the next slide, please, John. this is where it gets even more different to phase one. You might be familiar with the term Integrated Project Team, or IPT, which is the model that phase one uses to deliver the main works. We're not using an IPT on phase 2A. Instead, we're using something called a Design and Delivery Partner Model, or a DDP. So in essence, we'll be bringing in a project team, which is the DDP, and they will manage they'll have overall responsibility for the delivery of a complete design for phase 2A, and then they'll project manage and supervise the work that is carried out by the main works contractors. So at the moment, we're looking at 6 main civils works packages along the line of route, and they'll be geographically split, and the DDP will manage those contractors to deliver that design. We've then also got the additional bubble, which is the advanced civils work. So just ahead of the main contractors coming on board, we'll have the advanced civil works contractor. Just to point out, neither the advanced civil works or the design and delivery partner have been appointed. Advanced civils will start in late 2022 and run through to around about the middle of 2025. Key elements of this work are taking possession of the land and securing sites. There's final environmental survey activity, and then they'll start vegetation clearance, topsoil stripping, creation of compounds, some highway works, and some utility diversions as well. So that's the delivery models that we're operating. And then I think on the final slide, John, I just thought it'd be useful to pull out some of the engagement activity that we've been delivering to keep the communities along the line of route informed. So I'm not going to dive into the detail of any of these, but I think it's just worth mentioning that we've been highly successful in continuing to have the dialogue, the conversations with communities, with parish councils, with interested groups along the line of the route over the last 18 months whilst we've been in the grips of the pandemic. I think that's me done for my slides for now, John, so I'll hand back to you.
Okay, thank you, Jason. I'll move on to the next section of our presentation, which is focusing on HS2 opportunities and benefits for Staffordshire. The first area I want to focus on is our funding stream for phase 1. And Jason will talk about the phase 2A version, which is the Community Environmental Fund and the Business Local Economy Fund, which I'm pretty sure that hopefully members will be aware of these funds, which are administered by Groundwork on behalf of HS2 and the Department for Transport. We fully recognise that construction of HS2 will create impacts, and our approach is to try and reduce and minimise the impact as much as we can do during the construction period. And also, whilst looking at those opportunities to leave a long-lasting, sustainable legacy for Staffordshire's communities, and SEF and BLEF is an ideal opportunity to deliver that. So to date, Staffordshire area for phase 1 has had 8 projects approved, totalling £348,000. There are further projects that are going through the process now and hopefully will be announced shortly. So again, it's really good to see there's a good pipeline of projects that are coming through in Staffordshire. And these are designed, as I mentioned before, to leave that positive legacy. They are quite broad in terms of what they will fund, and it's designed to be very much community-led, a great opportunity for members to support parish councils, local authorities, for example, and other groups who are constituted and comply with the guidance and criteria to submit bids, to get some really good projects off the ground. And I'm really pleased to see that there have been some good ones that have been successfully delivered or being delivered in Staffordshire phase 1. And obviously, great opportunity to get some more off the ground as well. So I'm very passionate about promoting these, and I've been working with your officers, both at County Council level and at Lichfield District level, to promote these as much as we can and look for those opportunities to work together and deliver them. As I said, 5 further projects. There's an interactive map, that's an extract from there, which is on Groundwork's website, which basically you can delve into and get more detail. All the dots there, or the coloured icons, actually represent a project, which you can then have a look at, and it gives a summary of the type of project and the amount of money that was awarded and by who. So again, really good opportunity to delve into those, not just in Staffordshire, but also elsewhere, to just sort of see the remit and breadth of the projects that it will fund. again, there are other opportunities as well. There are a number of other funding streams that are applicable to leave a legacy. In Staffordshire, one being the Woodland Fund, and this is designed for landowners within 25 miles of the line of route who can apply for planting. So again, to leave a positive environmental legacy. And there's also the Road Safety Fund, which is administered by DFT and then given directly to the Staffordshire County Council to look at projects which improve, as the name suggests, safety on the highway and public rights of way. Could fund also, say, cycling provision, for example, to look at those areas which are impacted particularly by construction of the project. Again, that's something that Staffordshire County Council, I know, are very much involved in terms of identifying projects and submitting funding. And finally, I just want to talk about what our contractors are doing on the ground. As part of their contracts, they are required to deliver community investment within the areas they're working as part of that legacy work, and also to generate and sustain positive relationships with the communities that they are working within. As we know, they will be working in Staffordshire for a number of years yet. So again, this is one of their key objectives in terms of how to leave behind, some positive projects. This is not about money. It's not about giving money to communities or funding. It's about what additionality they can do. So it could be supplying materials, training, and also, basically working with and helping to empower communities to do certain things in their area. So again, very broad. Any ideas that members may have, again, please contact me, and we can have that discussions, and I can then introduce people to our contractors who are working in that particular area for phase one. So again, some really good projects that have been delivered so far, but let's get some other projects identified within Staffordshire. Jason, do you want to just do a quick update on phase 2A? In terms of community funds?
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
I mentioned that Royal Assent was achieved in February, so that's the trigger for the launch of SEF and BLEF. For 2A, there's an additional £5 million been allocated. What's really, really promising is that already, and we're only in July now, we've already had 7 applications for the funding pot, which is fantastic, so soon in the programme. And I think that's testament to the work that has been done to publicise it out in the field with communities, with parish councils and other groups. There has been one successful award already, again, which is great. I can't share the details with you, unfortunately, because it's still going through a certain amount of governance, both internally and with the successful bidder. But that's really promising. We also have on phase 2A a £2 million allocation for a biodiversity investment fund. So these are for bespoke projects which will bring additional benefit along the line of route. That's in addition to all the existing mitigation which is proposed for the railway. John's mentioned the Woodland Fund. Again, that follows throughout phase 2A as well. And there's also the Trent Sow fund, the £1.5 million, which has been allocated for that project. When I gave you the overview of the delivery model, I pointed to the fact that the only activity on the ground at the moment really is the ground investigation work. And Balfour Beatty have been doing some work with communities and supporting them. They've been donating materials, quite significant donation of materials to Henry Chadwick School for their Forest School programme. And they also were involved in the donation and delivery of 2 old London buses, one of which has been converted to a fantastic classroom and reading area for the school. So there's just a few kind of headlines of where we are at this early stage in the 2A programme.
Okay, thanks, Jason. And I'll move on to our section to explain how we're delivering or maximising the economic benefits for Staffordshire in terms of skills, employment benefits, and making sure that the local community in Staffordshire benefits from jobs created by our contractors and the delivery and their subcontractors, that local, especially young people or people that are looking to retrain or reskill, can benefit again from the jobs that are being created and delivered within Staffordshire. and also how we're working in partnership with other organisations in Staffordshire to help maximise the benefits as well, including local authorities, the LEP, and the Chamber of Commerce and other organisations as well, and what we're doing as an organisation to work with our contractors to maximise all of this. I wanted to illustrate with a real example, which is basically the case study on the left-hand side, which is basically it's a partnership between Balfour Beatty and Flannery Plant Hire, which has developed its Operator Skills Hub, which is to inspire young people and upskill current plan operators. And this was launched in February this year. Now, the location of this is literally on the border between Staffordshire and Warwickshire, just by junction 9 of the M42. And obviously, from that point of view, it's particularly relevant to Staffordshire's residents as being very close to Tamworth, and the area of Staffordshire around there. So again, even though it's just over the border, it is going to have wider benefits to Staffordshire's communities. So this effectively is as a plant operative apprenticeship. So again, it's about supporting apprenticeships as well. The first cohort started in January this year, and the hub will support 30 young people in its first year. It will also increase the retention of skilled operators and providing 200 supplementary courses to enhance existing knowledge and train 500 plus operators for HS2. So again, a really good example of something that's been delivered on the ground rather than theoretical. And hopefully this will be replicated by other such hubs, training opportunities in and around Staffordshire to help benefit Staffordshire's communities directly. Wanted to talk about how we're working with local enterprise partnerships. So HS2 and its supply chain have been represented at the Greater Birmingham and Solihull LEP, the South East Staff Employment and Skills Board since early 2018. We've been involved in the formation of a new construction and infrastructure sector group, which includes HS2 and Balfour Beatty and the Flannery plant. And we attend the Staffordshire County Council / Stoke-on-Staff's LEPS Skills Advisory Panel Board. And we have become, my colleague Mark Warrilow has become a board member to engage with and keep the group informed of all HS2 developments relating to skills, employment and education. So again, it gives an example of how we are working with existing partner organisations in Staffordshire to work together to promote these benefits, to make sure that not just Staffordshire's communities, but Staffordshire's business communities as well do stand to get benefits and maximise the opportunities from HS2 and particularly contract awards to support our delivery on the ground. Wanted to talk about the jobs brokerage model and how is Staffordshire already engaging with the job opportunities on the HS2 programme. So if I may talk about this in a bit more detail. So this effectively is job brokerage partners are local employment support organisations. They're publicly funded organisations whose primary objective is to support people into work. So this is very much about working proactively to look at how we work with our tier 1 contractors to ensure they place their vacancies through this job brokerage model via the HS2 job board. So they're looking at, as the name suggests, they act as brokers to identify suitable candidates for HS2 roles that are then placed by our contractors, and they support local residents access employment and employment related support, and particularly working with those organisations which offer support for people who are out of the jobs market for a number of reasons. So it could be or need additional support to get into the job market to benefit. So again, people with disabilities or a health condition, those experiencing homelessness, for example. So again, it's very much in terms of being very proactive and offering that level of support. So the job brokerage partners provide this end-to-end support for people looking to seeking access HS2 employment related opportunities. And as you can see from the start, from the diagram that's on there, you'll see the tier 1 contractors, and this is basically the Balfour Beatty Vonches of the world, and their main contractors. This is where the majority of obviously the employment, HS2 employment opportunities will be generated, and then again that's then tiers downwards to how this then is delivered through the model outlined. So again, it's very much how we are working very closely with this delivery model to make sure that we offer that really significant level of support for people to get jobs, and also support them while they're in the jobs as well. There is a job brokerage steering group for the West Midlands, and Staffordshire County Council is an affiliate job brokerage partner. It doesn't, it's not a main partner, as it doesn't, you don't directly deliver employment support, but I understand that you're considering establishing your own job brokerage to support your residents into work as well. So a bit of an example there for phase 1. For 2A, Jason, do you want to just pick up on that aspect, or do you want me to carry on?
Sorry, John, no, you carry on.
Okay, that's fine. And so now the contracts have been awarded on phase 2A, as Jason mentioned. Staffordshire County Council have already expressed interest in being a job brokerage partner. And that's something that the conversations are obviously being continued and being developed on that. So again, another opportunity there to replicate this for phase 1. So, replicate this for phase 2 and follow what we've set up for phase 1. So again, just to give an example of the level of detail and support that we are looking to deliver, working with our tier 1 contractors and other the job brokerage model and partners to make sure that we are actively encouraging and supporting local residents' benefit. I'll move on to basically in terms of what this looks like on the ground in terms of Staffordshire businesses already working on the project, but also what we're doing as HS2 and our contractors to promote these business opportunities. I'll work the screen if I may, Jason, if that's okay.
That's fine. I wondered where the text had gone there, John.
I thought there was more to it than that. I thought something fancy was going to happen, but obviously that's it.
So if I pick up here, just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the way that our dedicated engagement team are working with businesses and representative bodies along the line of route within Staffordshire. We've already got some fantastic relationships. The team are already talking with, working very closely with key parties within Staffordshire. So within the Chamber of Commerce, relationships with Sarah Williams and Declan Rydell, and within your county council itself, working very closely with Nicola Kent. And that relationship, it bears fruit in the fact that they regularly share the opportunities that we're presenting across their channels. One of those would be the Work With Us Wednesday webinar programme, which has been rolled out since the autumn of last year, delivering more detailed information about business opportunities and how organisations can upskill ready for contract opportunities, not just on phase 2A, but also within the phase 1 sphere. Our business engagement team has also delivered multiple bespoke webinars to the audiences of both the Chamber and the LEPs and the County Council over the past 18 months. We've also had some quite senior level attendance at some of our national and regional roundtables. The most recent one we had was just after Royal Assent. So we had representatives of the local authorities, the chambers and the LEPs to talk about how they can work with HS2 and how we can work with them to promote the opportunities and the benefits. So for us and for our business engagement team, I think the key messages are that we are committed to continue to work with all organisations, whether they're individual businesses or representative bodies, to see what we can do to promote the opportunities in the local area. As the phase 2A programme progresses, the opportunities will significantly ramp up once contractors come on board and actually start to bring in the significant workforce. And we're keen to continue to work with yourselves at the council, to better understand the capabilities of local businesses, so that not only do we bring benefits in the way of HS2, but we also bring that legacy benefit of upskilling the workforce throughout the county. I'm very mindful that obviously Jonathan and myself have presented on this kind of the second half of the information. We do have dedicated teams who look after the skills, education, employment aspect of what HS2 delivers, and also the business engagement. Unfortunately, neither colleagues were able to join us, but it's something that if you feel would be beneficial at future meetings, they can come along and talk in much greater depth and probably answer questions much more capably than Jonathan and I can about any of those particular facets. So I think that covers the slides and the information we were going to share. So thank you very much for your attention. I'll hand back now in case there are any questions.
Thank you very much. That was a very detailed presentation, which we thank you for. I know there are some questions, but does Councillor Williams, does anybody want to come in on the economy and skills bit, or do we want to bring Councillor White in?
I would suggest you bring Councillor White in on that one. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Councillor White, are you on the call? I don't think he's quite here yet.
Apologies, Chair. Unfortunately, Councillor White is suffering from an illness at the moment, which might mean he might have to not be there at a moment's notice. So I would suggest we go through Tim. If Tim Hemsley, he would be the best person, or Sarah.
Okay, Tim, do you want to come in on that? Tim Hemmingsley?
Thank you, Chair. I'll defer to Sarah, as she's much more knowledgeable than myself on these areas.
Okay, Sarah, over to you.
Hi there. Could you repeat the question that you need answering, please?
No, it's just an oral report for economy and skills, if there's anything you wish to add.
No, nothing from me other than to say that if there's any particular areas of interest that members have, or any particular questions or areas that you want to go into more detail in future, it's fine to just come directly to me if those occur to people later on and they want to raise them. And I'll liaise with John and Jason to tailor future presentations to what's required.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to questions then. Councillor Keith Flunder, do you want to ask your question?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, very long, detailed report. My questions are really just to hopefully fill in a few spaces and to find out really, I don't know whether one of the officers wanted to come in at one point there, but I'll leave that for the moment. I just wondered, in terms of the beginning of the whole concept of here, of how it's actually going to benefit the local environment here, and I noticed there's on the first of a couple of pages, there were services on existing networks was mentioned on one of the diagrams. And I'm still really not convinced that there's going to be massive benefit from the actual, if you like, rail links themselves in terms of how that's going to benefit people. And can someone please answer the question, if you like, is how is this going to work, and will it affect the existing services on those existing networks? I think it's something I mentioned, I think 6 months ago, and I'm still not convinced that there's going to be massive benefit on those additional. I assume there's going to be additional links on the existing networks to benefit from the HS2 development. So I'll leave that one out there. If someone could answer that one, that would be great. In terms of, I noticed on another diagram that there's an awful lot of architectural works and things like that that are going on. And I just wondered whether or not, is that going to come into the county's heritage collections, or where's all that information going to come from the architectural developments? Because obviously I don't know whether some of this is holding up the network development or whatever, but it would just be nice to know what effect that might have on the county council's own architectural elements, which I know is stored across the road here. And then I noticed also during the whole presentation that there was a different approach to 2A from what happened under the, or was it 2B under the original 2A systems, which was just presented to us. And what difference will people on the ground actually see? I realise there might be a different approach, where there might be some more consultations and things like that. But will we, as residents, actually see any real significant difference between those two approaches? Perhaps if someone could answer that question as well. And then in terms of the economic benefits at the end, I'm still not completely convinced that although there's short-term benefits of finding jobs for people during the construction stages, etc., I'm still not convinced there's going to be massive amounts of long-term benefits to people. I realise that some of our, hopefully, local younger people will become, hopefully, qualified engineers in some way. My son may be included in that, I don't know, but what will happen to those people? Will they have to move on to other projects? Will they stay in Staffordshire? What's the general idea and plan for those? So that's 4 questions. Thank you.
Jonathan, do you want to answer those?
Okay, no problem. I'll work backwards if I may. 1 second, I'm just getting my technology to work. I think, Councillor, when you mentioned, sorry, architectural elements, do you mean archaeological artefacts?
Correct, yeah. It's the archaeological sites. There's 2 or 3 mentioned on some of the diagrams in the early part of the presentation.
That's it. I'll answer that one. I'll start with that one if I may. The issue with that, obviously, that we obviously been able to take an archaeological surveys along the line of route, and our responsibility is obviously to record what is found, and if there are artifacts that are identified and then removed and stored, there is an agreement which is being finalised with I understand the county councils. I don't know what the title is. Sorry, apologies. Your artifacts team or archaeological team to look at opportunities for how artifacts can be displayed and stored, and that is subject to quite a detailed agreement, which with your lead officer, where we've always from an engagement point of view, and I'll talk about Hints, for example. We've done quite a lot of archaeological survey in that area, as part, not surprisingly, because of the location of Hints, very close to Wall and the Roman roads, the Roman intersection of the Roman roads there as well. There have been artifacts that have been discovered there, and we are very keen to promote these to the community. So the webinar has been arranged for next week, where our archaeological leads will present the findings of what's been found around Hints, and talk about the next steps in terms of what happens. But I'm pretty sure that Staffordshire County Council, as with most local authorities, are very keen that artifacts which are found and then capable of being stored are kept locally to tell that story about about Staffordshire and its history. So again, ongoing conversations on that, but there is that intention. The long-term benefits, I'll cover that as well. I think basically that hopefully the new skills that people are learning in Staffordshire are transferable. In not just working on an infrastructure project, also will mean that they can transfer to other construction projects, for example. So that means that they can remain in Staffordshire, so their knowledge, skills doesn't move from the county, and that's the intention. And it's the same with the approach to business engagement, making sure that businesses can diversify their offer to suit HS2, and our contractors and contracts to be able to win awards. But I see definitely in terms of skills, the skilling of communities in Staffordshire means that they are definitely transferable to other jobs and other opportunities. Long-term benefits, skilling. I would just in terms of what happened. In terms of the wider impacts on the existing network, this is quite detailed, and the whole purpose of HS2 is obviously to allow capacity to be increased on the existing railway, on the existing lines within Staffordshire. It may be something in terms of the level of detail that I can actually give to the committee afterwards, to be quite honest, because as I said, it is quite complicated, but I can certainly get a summary of that to committee members if that's helpful, Chair.
Yes, that would be. Thank you, Jonathan. Is that all of your questions answered, Councillor Flindon?
No, it was the difference on the impact that you'd see between the 2 approaches to delivering the models. That was the other one, and whether or not you're using any impact surveys that can help you in the future to redevelop the ideas of how you're interfacing with local communities during all this development. Thank you.
Shall I pick that one up, John?
Yeah, please, Jason. Yeah.
I don't think that communities will see any difference in the way that we work with them. Despite the fact we have several contractors. They will all be the face of HS2, the face of the organisation. They will work very, very closely with our HS2 engagement teams. They'll follow all the same principles. They will deliver in accordance with our engagement strategy, our framework, the code of construction practice. So I would like to think that the experience that the communities get will be a positive one, as positive it can be for the impacts that they will feel. With regards to the kind of the ongoing assessment and feedback that we receive, we utilise the services of Ipsos Mori to conduct ongoing survey activities. Periodically, they will go out and they will do telephone surveys of, for example, 2,500 residents along the line of route. And they will use that to measure the information that they gather. They'll use that to measure the progress that we make in our endeavours in community engagement and the way that we work with communities to minimise the impacts that they feel through construction. So we are constantly learning from the feedback that we get. We are constantly adapting and changing our approach to respond to the feedback that we get within the bounds of what's deliverable and what's acceptable. But we do undertake that ongoing feedback process, if that gives you any reassurance.
So what you're saying is the different approaches, that one of which you've highlighted today, in terms of approaching the second phase, I think it was, of 2A or 2B. I get confused between which one it is, but anyway, it was whichever one you presented today. Is that more of an internal reason why you've changed your approach? Or if it's not making any difference to residents, I just wondered why there was a difference in approach to this particular setup for this particular section of track.
The fundamental driver is programme. So as I highlighted, we received Royal Assent 4 years later than Phase 1 received Royal Assent, yet the whole premise behind splitting out Phase 2A from Phase 2B was to accelerate the delivery of the railway into Crewe. So Phase 2A into Crewe will open at the same time that Phase 1 opens. And it was deemed by those in the know that the more appropriate way to set up the contractual system was to break it down into smaller, more manageable component parts rather than have a large enabling works and a large main civils works contract. That's the primary reason for doing it, is to speed up the programme.
Thank you.
Councillor David Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I have the disadvantage, colleagues, that HS2 hits Staffordshire in my division. So whatever problems we experience, I get them first. And I have to say, although we've had a very interesting presentation today, very full and very comprehensive, my communities, particularly in Hints and the areas that are affected, have not been very satisfied with the way that HS2 has communicated. We do have a difficulty that HS2 presents no benefit at all to my division, particularly because I deal largely with retired people in those areas, and because small villages are small in population but large in terms of impact in what's going to happen with HS2. We had a very, very contentious planning application which we had to deal with in this chamber recently to deal with the production of concrete for the HS2 production. All sorts of conditions were placed on that application, but I would like to think that HS2 will now look at that application and look at the approval that was granted. I know it's not your application, but without the approval of that application, HS2 would not have had the aggregate that it requires to deliver the project. And so I would hope that you would take a serious look at that approval and look at how you can voluntarily add something to the delivery of aggregates to your sites with a reduced amount of problems to the community. When you look at places like Alderwas is going to be a nightmare with the aggregate movements there. Also, the A38 is going to be a nightmare. There's going to be major problems. Could I also mentioned, Chairman, that meetings have not been entirely productive with the community, particularly because you never ever seem to be able to produce the same team consistently from one meeting to the next. And so every meeting that you have to go back to square one rather than moving on from the point that you arrived at the last meeting. I don't know what the reasons are for that. I mean, that's presumably a problem that you have. And then, Chairman, on the funding that you have for communities, I understand that churches are excluded from that. I would point out that you're disagreeing with me. I understood that churches were excluded.
I'll explain.
I will emphasise that the church, in so many places, is the village hall. It's the heart of the community, not its religious role particularly, although that's part of it, but particularly how it fulfills the centre of the community. And our churches in villages desperately need support. And so if you're now saying to me that churches can be included, I'll do something about that. Sorry, I've raised enough, I think. Thank you, Chairman.
Would you like me to respond to some of those points as best as I can? I'll come back to the church, the religious buildings element of applying for the funds. It's important to demonstrate, though the funds do not support a particular religious project, for example, it will support projects which deliver a wider community benefit. So absolutely recognising that churches, particularly in rural villages, do act as that community facility effectively. They're multi-use and multi-purpose. So again, if you've got an idea, councillor, you want to discuss it, I'm more than happy to have an informal conversation with you, and also groundwork as well. Can also have a conversation as well before an application is submitted. But again, it's important to demonstrate that the project will benefit the wider community regardless of belief or non-belief, if that makes sense. But I totally understand where you're coming from on that in terms of the role of churches in Staffordshire's community, rural communities and beyond, of course. In terms of the Orwas planning application, I must admit I'm not au fait with all the conditions that have been attached to that, and you were right that that is not a HS2 application. It's Balfour Beatty. Obviously, will be using that to support their construction. I will have a chat with a conversation with my colleagues within Balfour Beatty, Vanchy, to understand what that looks like and in terms of what that means for minimising the impacts on the community. In terms of the transportation, I can't talk about transportation from Orwas to site, but obviously within the confines of the Act. I mentioned earlier about the construction of haul roads and haul routes, and this is important because this is where aggregates, materials and vehicles will use predominantly to reduce the impact on the highway network while we're constructing the project in Staffordshire. So again, I can obviously look at that and then to understand exactly what the position is in terms of planning conditions on that application and how that will translate on the ground. In terms of hints, that has been a hot topic, and that's something that I have been involved in, working with your officers and the construction commissioner for HS2. To look at the issues that have been raised there, and it has been subject to quite a lot of investigations and a report and a subsequent response to Sir Mark, the Independent Construction Commissioner's report, as well in a number of actions that have been agreed on the ground by our contractors to try and reduce their impacts. There are always lessons learned from an engagement perspective and delivery perspective as well, and one thing that I'm very keen to see, that there is one project or one project approach to engagement and communication. It's not one contractor, then another contractor, then another contractor. And hence, I've intervened to try and make sure that's happened. So we have consistent information and consistent personnel. And from an engagement perspective, I think my colleagues from all the contractor teams have been quite consistent over the past two years or so. But if you've got any concerns about meetings which you feel that there's different people being brought to, please raise that and I can look into that for you. It may be more about technical experts and that may change as people, we depending on what the issue we're talking about, we have to get different people involved. For example, if it's environmental and different it's very specialist subject matters covering very specific environmental subjects, we may have different people then. But again, I hear your concerns on that, and I do agree that consistency is absolutely critical where we can do, so we don't have to keep going back to the same issue time and time again. Have I missed anything else, Councillor? Sorry.
That we probably got a lot more to come from other members, and that's how I ought to stand back. Chairman. Thank you.
Tim, did you want to come in? You've put your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I think so far there's been some really good points raised by members. However, I just want to recommend really that the committee focuses on the economic aspects through this particular committee. So, you know, we're looking at how labour is used on the schemes, and we want obviously as much as possible Staffordshire labour, Staffordshire firms, materials again where possible. We want to be holding HS2 to account to use materials from Staffordshire as locally as possible. You know, we want to take full advantage of the training and the skill opportunities that HS2 can provide through the job brokerage schemes as well, and things like that. Funding pots for communities, we want to make sure we fully utilise and leverage those. And also, you know, from myself and Sarah and the HS2 team on the Staffordshire side, we get updates from HS2 about contacts with the contact centre that they've had. So we're getting to see how the community engagement aspects are working, and obviously we're getting direct feedback as well from members and from parish councils. But I think it's key that we do focus on those economic aspects and how we can influence those through this committee and through the life of the project, particularly during the construction phase. That's going to be where we can have the biggest impact, I feel. Thank you.
Councillor Hutton.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to take the HS2 team back to their second slide, where they've got key facts. So in my discussions with HS2, I asked why they couldn't utilise parts of the West Coast Main Line, and they said their trains are far too big to go on the West Coast Main Line. And yet your second key fact said HS2 trains will also run on the existing network. My understanding is that you will adapt Pendolinos to run on the HS2 network. So I don't think it's a key fact. I think you should reword that to say exactly what you mean. And HS2 will connect 30 million people. Well, those people are already connected, and HS2 will only go from London to planned to, well, it'll go from London to Crewe, and then it's planned to go to Manchester and eventually to Leeds. So I see 4 cities there, not 8 cities. So I think you're claiming things which are incorrect, and I don't think you should have them as key facts. Thank you, Chair.
Jonathan?
Yep, sorry, I was just waiting that you were zooming in there. In terms of the whole purpose is to allow trains to actually connect to the existing West Coast Main Line, and then open up the market, as it were, to other cities as well, as far north as ultimately as the northwest, for example. So it is valid to actually say that we are actually directly directly connecting to cities, stations that are outside of the actual new stations on the line of route, if that makes sense, including Manchester, Birmingham, etc. So that is the intention, that they, even though they will not necessarily be on the actual new HS2 network, they will still be served by trains without the need to change.
And if I may just come in on the comment about adapted Pendolinos, all the rolling stock that will operate on HS2 will be new rolling stock. So fundamentally there will be 2 types of rolling stock. There'll be that which goes purely on HS2 new track, and then there'll be what's called classic compatible, and those are the trains that are able to operate on HS2 lines and then also on the existing network. So they have the capability to use both types of track. We won't be adapting the current design of any train. It will be a brand new bespoke HS2 design in both circumstances. To the point about the 8 largest cities, that includes the phase 2B route. So if you consider the eastern leg, which runs to the East Midlands, it connects into Sheffield, into Leeds and into York. And then if you also consider the onward interconnectivity of both the western and the eastern leg, they go all the way up through Preston, Lancaster and up to Scotland, and then on the east coast all the way up to Durham and Newcastle. So that, I think we safely stand behind the 8 major cities, and I hope that just gives a little bit of comfort around the question around the existing trains and the compatibility.
Councillor Ross Ward.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just 2 or 3 questions, if I could. And I want to step out of the HS2 bubble a little bit to look at it from the wider Staffordshire perspective and its impact on the construction industry. First of all, there was quite a lot of talk in your presentation about upskilling, which was great. Currently, my experience of that is that actually the upskilling isn't happening directly, and there's an enormous resource drain on existing small and medium-sized enterprises where staff are moving from these businesses that are working outside of HS2 into HS2. So you're effectively pushing the upskilling costs back out to the wider industry, which happen to pick this up for all the resources that they've lost to the project. Secondly, on a similar sort of line, resource supply chain. There's a number of pressures on supply chains. We're all aware of that at the minute, but particularly whenever I contact a supplier, we're always told that the issues we're having with the resources are linked to HS2. And that there's a massive drain of resources into the project, which is great, there's a great opportunity there, but it's impacting all the businesses around Staffordshire that are struggling to deliver their projects. I can give examples of some products that were originally have like a 4-week lead time. We're now being quoted 22 weeks, which is a significant impact on potential programme delivery for other projects outside of HS2. Thirdly, I'm just interested to know how many small to medium-sized enterprises are engaged directly through HS2 rather than your large tier 1 contractors. And the reason I ask that is that with the best will in the world and how tight your frameworks are, there's always an element of subby-bashing, if you like, from the large contractors who put enormous pressures on smaller businesses in terms of their costs. And I'm just, basically, who's marking the homework of your large tier contractors to make sure that the smaller enterprises are getting a fair and equitable bite of the cherry, if you like? And finally, a little bit of crystal ball stuff here, I guess, but I'm just wondering what our exit strategy or your legacy planning is for employees on the HS2 once this project's complete. I know we're looking way down the line at the minute, but we've got the potential of an enormous number of highly skilled workers with niche skills across Staffordshire that suddenly there's not the work there for them to forward their careers. And are we going to look at a brain drain out of the county? Or what is our exit strategy to look after these people going forward and for us not to lose this valuable asset from our county to other areas of the country? Thank you.
Jonathan?
Okay, I'll start with the issue around availability of materials. This was actually raised in parliamentary question time, probably was it this week or the week before. And I think the Minister responded to say that he has not seen any direct evidence that there's a direct correlation with HS2 and a general construction supply issue. And I think there are a number of factors that may be at play here that have been particularly, it has a particular influence since the start of the year in terms of which have had an impact on construction supply materials. So again, there doesn't seem to be any hard evidence that HS2 is a particularly contributory factor in that, but obviously as the country's most significant infrastructure project, it's always something to be aware of. Probably nothing further to add on that than what the Minister said in Parliament, as I said a few weeks ago, if not this week. Some of the issues in terms of how SMEs are to benefit from the contracts award are probably something that our colleagues that Jason mentioned earlier would be able to talk about in more detail, to be honest, Councillor. I am not entirely sure in terms of how the contracts are being managed to make sure that SMEs are benefiting directly. That's something we can focus on at a subsequent meeting. There was the final question was about the making sure is that the exit strategy in terms of making sure that people don't leave Staffordshire once the project's finished, or once their particular job as the project is completed. Is that what was that the question? The essence of the question?
Yes, yeah.
I think that's where we work. I think that's basically how we work together. I think that's an element that not just HS2 can look at in isolation. I think that comes down to how we're working with organisations such as Staffordshire County Council, the LEP, and the Chamber of Commerce, etc., Federation of Small Business, to make sure that what other projects or other economic, other job creation in Staffordshire utilises those skills. I think it's something that we need to keep collectively, making sure that the economy grows in Staffordshire and that people can continue to benefit and move to appropriate jobs that are being created. I mean, Staffordshire has been very successful, hasn't it? Particularly from attracting new business and new investment. There are major companies such as JCB that are still looking to expand. So again, it's perfectly placed, isn't Staffordshire, in the country geographically to benefit from that type of investment. But I think it's a big picture piece that HS2 can help towards. But I think it's that partnership approach that we need to take into account here.
Yeah, thanks for that. I just want to come back very briefly to the material resource management. I get that it's a complex issue, and also that a lot of the evidence is anecdotal. But the question is really, is anyone looking at this? It's one thing to say you've seen no evidence, but is anybody gathering evidence to test this? I would thoroughly recommend that you go and speak to Western Power, which is quite a large organisation, and ask them how their infrastructure programme is going and the impact it's having there, because they are having enormous difficulties through supply chain management of materials at the minute. And whilst I accept that HS2 won't be the panacea of the problem, they're certainly contributing to that. So there's clearly an issue out there, and I would suggest that we go and look for evidence rather than waiting for it to present itself when it's probably too late then, because the damage could be significant to the Staffordshire economy.
No, I think, if I remember correctly, I can't remember verbatim what the Minister said, but I think he did commit to look at the issue in more detail. Western Power, obviously one of our key partners in delivering utility works for Phase 1, and I imagine for Phase 2A as well. So again, any supply issues would potentially impact us as well. So it's something that we do definitely need to manage carefully between us. It's something that I can certainly take away and see what's happening, but I'm not as close to that. But as I said, I'm pretty sure the Minister did say that it's something that was on his radar that he would look into in more detail. But there's something I can get an update for the committee.
Councillor Bernard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to support David Smith on what he asked, whereby a report comes in about aggregates, because when you talk about aggregates, you're talking about aggravation. Where I'm concerned, I mean, I'm not along the route of HS2, but within the division that I represent, which is on junction 11 of the M6 and the start of the M6 toll, I've got a feeling that many lorries are going to be using the quarries that are surrounding that area, which is already a huge problem for people around that particular area, on the amount of lorries that are using that same junction 11. And not only junction 11, but other areas around it. And I've got a feeling that a lot of lorries are going to be coming into that area. So what I'm asking is that, can we have a report, yes, on aggregates, but where are they being collected from? Because people who are along the area are being consulted, but there are a lot of people who are not along the area, where suddenly they might be inundated with lorries, for instance, for aggregates. So aggregates mean aggravation, and it would be very nice to have some kind of information of where the aggregates are being collected from.
Jonathan, do you want to answer that one?
For phase, I think that's outside of the phase 1 remit, Councillor. I'm not sure if it might obviously impact on materials for phase 1. I don't know. Jason, is there anything specific that you're aware of for phase 2? Is it more phase 2B as well? It might be something we collectively look at.
Yeah, I think it probably is more in the phase 2A area. I mean, as I alluded to in the earlier slides of the presentation, phase 2A is in a much more in a much earlier stage of the overall construction programme. So the type of activity which would require aggregates being brought to site is not yet in train, and as such the procurement strategy that each of those contractors would employ has not yet been devised. So we wouldn't yet have that information available from phase 2A for the construction programme. We can certainly go back and ask the question what level of detail we do have or that we will have on the procurement of aggregates and where they will be coming from, and if there is a strategy that we are requiring our supply chain to follow. So we can certainly take that away and ask the question.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hudson, sorry, I forgot your surname then.
Thank you, Chair. I'm new to the Chamber and new to the Planning Committee, and at the moment my division and my borough ward aren't directly affected by HS2 yet. Going back to Councillor Smith's point about aggregates, I attended my first Planning Committee meeting last Thursday with this controversial planning for aggregates and cement works. And what disappointed me was the officers of the council recommending a planning application that goes against a policy that was made by this council in 2017, basically throwing that policy out with the bathwater. So it could cause some aggravation for the county council in future, because we've thrown a policy out that we brought in 2017 about aggregates and completely gone now. So how many more applications will we get for aggregates within Staffordshire that we may have to look at and say, well, we broke the policy once for HS2, have we got to do that again in the future for other people? My argument was on the day was, did we have to have that particular supplier? Did we have to have that particular area to take the aggregates for? No, we didn't, but we still had to vote on it, which gave the member for that division that it's in, put her in quite a difficult position, because she got elected to the county council back in May on the policies that the council had agreed years ago. So how many more policies have the county council got to throw out for the sake of HS2? I wasn't very happy with that. As regards a ward, in my ward in the borough of East Staffordshire, at the moment there is a traffic regulation order that stops lorries turning right from Kings Bromley along the A515 up to the A50. We've heard rumours that HS2 lorries will be exempt from that. And if that's the case, then obviously that's going to cause my ward some issues when we've got these lorries coming along through Draycott and the Clay. What assurance can you give me that this exemption won't affect us? Thank you.
Jason, I think, is that you?
I can come in on the second point about the TRO. I would have to look in detail at what's set out in the Act, what we have included for in the Act, but if it's just a rumour, then I would suggest it is just a rumour, because we are only allowed to follow the traffic routes and the changes and the red line boundary that we have originally set out in the hybrid bill, and which then received royal assent in February. So whatever's set out in the Act is what we will deliver. But I'll take note of the comment made by the councillor, and I will double check, and I can certainly come back just to give that confirmation about that right turn. I think the second point was possibly not necessarily, and it was about the number of applications likely. I think the reference was made earlier about a crystal ball moment. this is a bit of a crystal ball question. We don't have that answer because we don't know the procurement strategy for our suppliers. And as for the comment about the recommendations, I'll leave that to yourselves. Yeah, Councillor Hudson, I think the first part of your question you need to take back to planning specifically to officers there. I don't think that's a question HS2 can answer today. Tim, have you got your hand up to intervene?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just on that point of the exemption for the right turn bans, I was heavily involved in that originally. There was always an exemption for HS2 HGV vehicles at the right turn bans on the A515. It just covered phase 1 at the time. Recently, there's an exemption now being made to cover phase 2A HGV vehicles as well. Although it's not an automatic right of HS2 to have that exemption, they do have powers under the Act to pursue an exemption if they need it to construct the scheme. What I would say is there's an assurance in Kings Bromley, which is on the A515, that no HS2 construction traffic will go through Kings Bromley on the A515. There are a couple of caveats to that, but that's the general principle. So it shouldn't, all the HS2 traffic, HGV traffic should be south of Kings Bromley on the A515. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Tim. If there are no further questions, I'm going to summarise and bring this item to a close. There was a lot of information for us to take on board, and we are going to have further HS2 updates going forward. So we've obviously heard the presentation from HS2, and we thank you for coming into our meeting this morning. Everyone's asked questions that wanted to ask questions, and we've all been given the opportunity to speak. The only thing I was going to ask is a personal plea, is if we as a committee could perhaps visit Dunton Wharf to see the work in action ourselves. Don't know whether that's something that can be organised. I'm quite happy to go along with that, and if any of the committee want to come and see that, I'm interested in the type of people that are there and how it's working for our young apprentices across Staffordshire. So if HS2 or Jason or Jonathan, if you want to send me an email about that, that'd be fine, and we'll organise a little outing, I suppose. let's all go on a day trip. Bring your sandwiches and your picnic. So there isn't a recommendation for this presentation, but are we happy as a committee that HS2 and Staffordshire County Council are doing everything they possibly can, working together to mitigate any issues? That's the first bit. Was the presentation what we wanted for today, and do we want to add anything going forward? I'm happy that we've received what we need at the moment. You've asked your questions and they're going to come back on those. Councillor Flunder?
Yeah, I think there was two things they were going to come back to embellish in any future reports, and that was going to be the local network impact on the local network transportation system, and also the impact SMEs that they couldn't respond to. So those two elements will have to come back to a future meeting by the looks of it with the next presentation.
Okay, you've got those, Jonathan, yeah, to come back to us future. So if ever...
And Chair, if I may, very happy to organise future site visits with the committee, not just to Dunton Wharf, but elsewhere as well. So perhaps a compound visit?
Yeah, Dunton Wharf near Tamworth.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Anywhere that, yeah, happy to do that, facilitate that, brings it to life a little bit, doesn't it?
Okay, I'll get my hard hat and hobnail boots ready.
We'll supply those, Chair.
So if everyone's happy, I'll bring that item to a close, and we've added what we want to add for next time. Thank you very much, members from HS2. Thank you, Cabinet members. And we'll move on to the next item. Item 5, which is the executive response to all-party working group, aspiration, future economy and enterprise. And I believe, Councillor Tagg, that's you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. The two AP all-party working groups, I'll call them, APWGs, one relating to aspirations, which is reported at the end of 2019, which was pre-pandemic pandemic. And then the future economy reported at the end of 2020, which taken into account, obviously, the effects of the pandemic on Staffordshire from a point of view of businesses. It involved members of the council, some within this room. David Smith, for example, was involved in both, I believe. And then external partners as well as council staff, and also frontline practitioners in the areas of focus. In aspirations, there were 4 themes that the group looked at: early years, young people, adult upskilling and adult lifelong learning. And a series of recommendations were put forward, which are contained in the report before you today. The Future Economies group posed 2 questions. How can we support existing businesses and help them to recover and grow following the pandemic? And how can we give new businesses and entrepreneurs the best start and ongoing support in these challenging times? Again, the working group produced a series of recommendations that are contained within the report. Cabinet received the reports from the all-party working group on the 16th of June. Their report is also before you and details the actions and up to date on implementation of the recommendations and future work planned to that end. The report comes before scrutiny today for Cabinet are interested in feedback and suggestions from members and to discuss how they wish to monitor this agenda going forward and also develop the work which was completed by the all-party working group, taking into account the new overview function that the Scrutiny Committee has, which has replaced the all-party working groups. So that's my introduction, Chair. Happy to take any questions and comments on board and report them back to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Tagg. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor David Smith.
But only I was involved in these things and I found them very, very useful. And I support the comments that are made within the reports. And I think it's very sensible that go forward. I would particularly like to feel pleased at Councillor Tagg's new appointment to the Cabinet. And I hope that the committee we have, which was looking at climate change, which now seems to have gone into the ether somewhere, that we do something about setting that up again, because I think the great thing that this council needs to do is to look at thinking, I hate the suggestion outside the box, but I think we need to be creative and imaginative in our thinking in what we need to do. There may not be things that we can do now, but there are things we need to prepare for in the future. And so I look forward to something coming back to this committee as far as climate change is concerned. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I was involved in the isolation working group and there were some really, really good comments that came out of that, and we had nearly 60 volunteer groups at one stage helping us out. So for me it was a real eye-opener. We all get that people are isolated, vulnerable and alone, but until you actually speak to people in those situations, it was a real good piece of work, and I commend Councillor Flunder as the chair of that, as he sat next to me and he's in kicking distance. That we did work really well, and it was a good piece of work, and it was an enjoyable piece of work as well. So any further questions? Councillor Ross Wood.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's a really positive report, actually. There's lots of great things in there. And I'm just keen, I think there were 17 recommendations altogether that have gone to Cabinet. And there's lots of things in there, but a lot of them are quite nebulous at the minute and in early development. And it would just be great if you could come back to us with an update, I suppose, as and when is relevant for the progress, if you like, in implementing these various recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Tagg, do you know when that can happen? Or
well, just addressing the couple of points that have been made by Councillor Smith. Yes, there is a gap there since that Climate Change Committee hasn't met. What I could suggest is that climate change is obviously a cross-cutting issue for all of the scrutiny committees, and if the chairs of the scrutiny committees could consider setting up an overarching working party on climate change, I would certainly, I think that would be a good move, and I'd certainly support that interact with that and look forward to recommendations coming out of that. I think that would be a way of resurrecting that. Since we no longer have the all-party working groups, we have scrutiny overview, don't we, which we could have an overarching overviewing of the climate change, which would be good. I think you're right, Councillor Ward, on the nebulous of some of these, because that's why we need scrutiny really to continue to look at this to ensure we deliver those recommendations and also keep them on track. So I think I'd welcome that, and I'm sure that Philip White, whose portfolio this falls under, would as well. And of course the next item is all about this as well, and contains a lot of what has come out of the working group in getting Staffordshire back to business, isn't it? So yeah, I completely agree.
Darryl?
Yeah, if I may, Chair, suggest that you know, with the changes that we've got now, and the all-party working groups have concluded, and we have now overview as part of scrutiny arrangements. Within these reports, there might be areas that this scrutiny and overview committee wants to look at from an overview perspective. So, for example, the work around entrepreneurialism and how we support new business startups. So as well as looking back and scrutinising performance against this plan, we might want to also have a session where we look forward and look at, well, what are we doing around how we support new entrepreneurs? What do the plans look like? What's the strategy looking like? And how can we shape it? So it's just a suggestion, Chair, but it might be from this, there's some themes that we want to focus our overview element on over the next year.
Thanks. Well, say what's vested interest, as already pointed out, shall I say. So can I just say, you know, obviously the whole process, as far as I was concerned, did go incredibly well. And I do think that these as Simon has already said, these are the response to 2 reports, which were badly affected by the pandemic outbreak and everything else. I just wondered if, no need to, but if Simon thought of anything that would really aspire and enthuse our communities within this to help out economically, and to point people, you know, that might be a little bit frustrated or not skilled up enough or anything else. What can we do to really push those people, to aspire them to do better for communities as well as for the economy of our great county, as they say? Thank you.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Chair. Just on the point from what Ross raised, I've just had some via Teams chat, an update from one of our officers that there is a 6-monthly review of this anyway, so I think that should come to scrutiny, and that'd be really good. On the point that Councillor Flunder makes, I think in the aspiration report recommendations, there is that full sort of branding up of an aspiration Staffordshire. Again, that's very nebulous at the moment, as Councillor Ward says, but I think, you know, using online, using, you know, ourselves in this room as ambassadors, as well as those out in the community, we can really spread that, because I think aspiration, particularly in younger people, has really taken a knock, hasn't it, over the COVID period, and we've got to get back on track and get back to normal and really sort of infuse people to make the best of their lives. And there are opportunities out there, we just need to signpost them to those. I think it really fits in with your work on isolation as well, which there's so many cross-cutting aspects of that, because people are far more isolated now than they were before the pandemic. And again, younger people have missed out on so many opportunities to interact and aspire to what they want to do.
Councillor Hudson.
Yeah, building on that, I think that we need to look at as well our SEN children in education. I work with them in Derbyshire, and a lot of them, their aspirations are very low, they feel very undervalued, they don't understand actually that they've got a lot of skills that we can get them to develop. A lot of them feel very worthless in life, and what does the future hold for them? So it's an area really that we need to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If there are no further questions, thank you, Councillor Tagg, for your report on that. Thank you to the chairs that undertook that work and everybody that was involved. We'll look forward for those updates and hopefully get up a working group with an overview of overarching scrutiny going forward. That's a bit of a mouthful, that is. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Councillor Tagg. I believe you're staying for the next bit anyway, or you can leave, it's up to you. We will move on to item 6, Economic Recovery Renewal and Transformation Quarterly Update. Now, if we can bear with Councillor Philip White, who is online but is a bit poorly, so if his voice starts to crackle, He is suffering, so let's just bear with him. Over to you, Councillor Philip White, and good morning.
Morning, Chair. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm hoping you're going to be able to hear me over the fans, because inconveniently I've got quite a bad chest infection, which is why I'm not with you. And I hear it's quite noisy in there today. So it's good to see you all virtually. The report's before you, and I'll take it as read. So I'm not going to attempt to regurgitate it all. In my opening remarks, I think the salient remarks are to say that we are now, I think it's quite clear, well into the throes of a recovery, which is happening at different rates in different sectors of our economy, mostly due to the limitations that are still put upon us by the effects of the pandemic. And also challenges in the supply chain, both in terms of materials, but also in terms of staff. But the overall picture is positive. So we are seeing our GDP, both nationally and locally, growing. We're seeing a growth in accommodation and food services, which is running close to 40% growth, which is very pleasing as that sector reopens. We have seen a continued reduction in our already relatively low unemployment rate in Staffordshire, which fell again in this month's figures. So the claimant rate in Staffordshire is now 4.4% of our working age population, compared to 6.1% nationally, 7% in the West Midlands. And we're seeing growth in demand from our businesses in terms of their expansion. So this was, I know, discussed in the County Council meeting yesterday. So apologies to council colleagues who may have heard it yesterday. But JCB are looking to add 500. Staff to their operations, in addition to the 850 announced earlier this year. Midlands 3D Printing is adding 100 more machines to their factory in Stone, which is wonderful. There's a £4 million investment by Alpha Manufacturing at Beacon Park in Stafford. Quintus are bringing forward 235,000 square feet of new floor space at Branston Locks in 2022. The list goes on. The overall picture is an awful lot of activity, and that rebound in our economy. The rest of the detail in the report is there. I don't propose to try and reproduce it all, but that's the overall picture, that our economy is bouncing back, which we're very pleased to see. Our job is to look at the local elements of that and to make sure that we're continuing to help where help is required. But frankly, at the rest of the time to step back and let businesses get on with it where they don't need our help. So I'll leave it there for now. I hope you could hear all of that, and I'd be grateful to know that you could. And I'd be delighted to answer any questions.
Thank you, Philip. Well done. You do look a bit green round the gills this morning, but thank you for attending this morning. It's lovely to see you, albeit on screen. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor David Smith.
Chairman, could I just... we've just had a presentation from HS2, and one of the things that was mentioned was how we would work together on recruitment and job opportunities. And I just would like to ask... I had someone in my community that was asking about apprenticeships and job opportunities within the county council, and we didn't seem to have any simple line of approach to the county council to find out what was available, and of course to the wider sector as well. And I just wonder whether we might have something which was a published number that people could call where they could get information more easily. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor White, are you able to answer that one?
Yes, I'm very happy to. So HR and recruitment sits outside my portfolio, but I am very interested in it because I run a recruitment business. It is my day job, and we are in the process of developing a distinct recruitment presence. Effectively a microsite is the way I understand it, so that there'll be one front door for anybody who's looking to come to look at jobs, whether that's apprenticeships, which I really hope it will be. Or other types of jobs within the county council. So we're very aware of that. There's a lot of work going on in that respect. We have an excellent recruitment manager who we hired. Darryl Ayres will probably be able to help with the exact date, but I think it was just before the pandemic hit, who is spearheading that work. But it is really important that we're really easy for people to come to find out what employment opportunities we have. I think it was a little bit too dispersed previously, and so it sort of agrees with his point, but it might not be a phone number, it might be a website where you can go and get a lot in one shot. Darryl, help me out if you can with any of the detail of that I've missed, but hopefully that's a faithful answer.
Yeah, Philip's absolutely right. There's significant changes going on right now to the way we recruit and retain people in the county council through HR. To have a microsite that makes it a lot easier, because you've already highlighted the exact issues. But if I could direct all members to the website wmjobs.co.uk, that picks up all public sector jobs that are advertised in the West Midlands and advertises them in one place as well. It doesn't necessarily capture quite everything, but it's quite a useful portal if you've got a resident who's interested in public sector employment in the region as a starter until our microsite is up and running, if that helps.
Darryl, did you say WM? Or
WM, yeah,
right.
M for, yeah.
West Midlands.
I can send the link to Jonathan and it can get circulated.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Rossward.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report. I think there's a lot of good news in there, despite the difficult situation we find ourselves in. A lot of data, and it's very useful to see it when we've all got our parochial heads on looking at our own districts rather than as a county, which is really useful. But it would just, and I'm sure the state is there, and apologies if I've missed it within the report, but it'd be really useful to see the information broken down into sectors so we can understand if there are any particular sectors across the county that are struggling more than others, because there might be a boom in certain areas which is masking areas of difficulty across the county that we might not be able to see. So if we could have some more granular detail on that in future reports, that would be really useful to understand if there is a problem sitting there that we're not aware of, or if there's a good news story out there that we need to understand and take some learnings from for other sectors. Thank you.
Councillor White, do we have that information that can be sent round, or? Yeah,
we can certainly share that, and forgive me because I am a little under the weather, as you said. I will rely on Darryl to add in any detail at any of these points that I miss. But the sectoral analysis in short terms at the moment shows a great degree of demand in engineering and manufacturing, a high degree of demand in the hospitality sector. Because a lot of the people who were working in that sector before the pandemic have found jobs in other areas, which is a good thing, but also a challenge for those hospitality businesses now that they are getting back up and running. And also in digital and other IT-based jobs. I think I'm right in saying they're the three key areas of demand that we have at the moment in Staffordshire. Plus health and care, which is an ongoing area of demand. And has been for quite some time. I think that is the basic run through, but we can certainly provide the breakdown on an ongoing basis.
Darryl, have you got anything to add, or is that everything?
That's correct, but in terms of job vacancies themselves as well, the data we have tends to be by occupation type rather than sector, because that's what's available. But we use other data to correlate it and get a feel for how the sectors are growing. So you'll see things like technical managerial jobs in there. Now they could be in any sector, but we know they're higher values. So we'll have both sets of data that will give you a good picture of what's happening around the county.
Thank you. Councillor Keith Flunder.
Sorry, it's just I remember being in this committee a couple of years back where we actually started to look at dashboards for each division, and I think this is a backup to what Ross has said. I think we were hoping that would become the norm, so that and in relation to what I'm looking at the moment in terms of jobs, in terms of training and in terms of sectors, within each of our divisions, we could then take that information through to town council, parish council meetings, all that sort of thing, and put it out there so that everyone's singing from the same song sheet, as it were, and also supporting communities as well to look at where jobs might be coming into the future and how we can actually start planning for that. So I think all that's quite important if we could bring all that together. I know it might be a bit more work than otherwise, but I can remember all of us being sent a dashboard. I'm not sure, I think it was about 2 years ago. I don't know whether anyone can remember that one. I don't know whether Philip remembers that, but I do think it's something that would really help us look at ways that we can impact it. And in fact, as Simon has already said, ties back to the impact of all the recommendations and suggestions that the Cabinet are now looking at and implementing. So that would be a great way that we could then look at it ourselves and monitor it and maybe come back to this committee to see how it all fits together in a year's time or something. I don't know how long it might take, but anyway, thank you.
Darryl?
Yeah, we'll take away as an action to have a look at how we do that with the resources we have, how much can be automated is nice and easy versus any extra effort, and what that means against all the other priorities, as we would with anything, if that's okay. But obviously we want to supply you with as much useful information as possible.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Okay, so in summary, we've heard from Councillor Philip White, and the recommendations are that the Select Committee considers the quarterly update provided on progress made against the Staffordshire Economic Recovery, Renewal and Transformation Strategy. The Select Committee considers the interventions already made by the County Council and partner organisations and recommends further interventions to be considered by Cabinet that the committee believes would help to enable the successful delivery of this strategy. And also see that further updates going forward, hopefully coming out of COVID-19, that these are brought to the committee on a 6-monthly basis rather than quarterly. Everybody happy? Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Thank you, Councillor White. Oh, you've got your hand up, sorry.
Yes, I was just going to say thank you very much, Chair, and also thank you to the other members of the committee for being so gentle with me today. The one thing I did want to flag up is that we will be reviewing the strategy now that we feel that we are at that tipping point where we are in recovery rather than still in the crisis phase of the pandemic. We will be reviewing our strategy so that we can get ahead of the issues that we have in the economy and the opportunities that are there. That review will be taking place over the next few months, and I think that next 6-monthly point you've identified will be ideal timing to be able to bring that strategy forwards. I think some of the issues that have been highlighted here, particularly around the skills agenda and trying to get ahead of the trends there, are going to be very prominent in that. So I just wanted to flag that up whilst I had the opportunity. I'm particularly keen now that you have the overview function as well as the scrutiny function within the committee, that we take full benefit of that in terms of evolving that new version of the strategy for the new phase in the process of economic recovery.
Thank you, Councillor White. We'll leave you to go and get better, and we'll hope to see you in the chamber soon. Keep all your germs to yourself. Thank you for attending this morning. Thank you, gentlemen at the back there, having a little chat. Thank you for your attendance this morning, and we'll move on to item 7, which is our work programme. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chairman. It's pretty much as set out in the report. I've highlighted the issues that require committee approval in green. There are a couple of other points. We've had a provisional request from Safeguarding Scrutiny to participate in a joint review of sexual harassment in Staffordshire schools, and there was mention about identifying one representative of this committee to take part in that. So I don't know whether you want to ask for volunteers or...
Does anybody want to volunteer at this stage, or... Okay, for now then it'll be me going unless somebody comes up with a dying urge to go. So if you can put my name forward and let me know when that is, and if anyone else wants to do it then let Jonathan know.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr Barrs confirmed he's available to attend in September if you're minded to approve the item about 20's plenty.
Sorry, Jonathan, just on that, we had the discussion about that at the last meeting, and myself, Jonathan, and the two vice chairs have discussed it at a pre-meet. We thought it was a good idea if residents are prepared to engage with us, then we need to engage back. It's the first time we've had any engagement on this kind of committee, so we are prepared to hear the presentation from Mr Barr and then make a decision going forward as to how we do anything, if we do anything at all. Sorry, Jonathan.
It's okay. Yeah, just going back to climate change, Chairman, we've had a request from Simon Tagg to consider the climate change annual report and draft action plan 2 in September as well. So that's just another item.
Okay, that's going to make that agenda very top heavy.
Whether you want to give consideration to rejigging a few.
Can we talk out of this meeting on that? And because we've already got on the September meeting, if I'm correct, we've already got household waste recycling update. We've got the 20 is plenty scrutiny review, and we've got Safer Roads Partnership.
That's correct.
So that's going to be already a hefty agenda. What do members think? Yep. Councillor Smith?
Chairman, I fully understand that's a heavy agenda, and I think if we had to schedule for it to go into the afternoon, climate change is so important. We have lost, because we haven't met and discussed climate change for 3 years now, and we declared it as a council emergency. It doesn't seem much of an emergency to me, so I think that we should let the meeting run for whatever length it does, and if we have to go into the afternoon, then organise some sandwiches, Chairman.
Are members happy that we add that? I have no problem with it, but I'm only one person, so I'm asking for hands up in agreement. Sorry, Jonathan, did you want to come back?
I was just going to say, Chairman, the only other option maybe is to move the Safer Roads Partnership. I mean, it sort of fits in with 20's plenty, but I think the issue with the climate change report was it's going to be considered by Cabinet in October, so you wanted pre-decision scrutiny.
Let's add it to this September agenda and leave everything as it is, and we'll add it and we'll see how it goes. The 20 is plenty might be really quick, we don't know. Safer roads might be really quick, we don't know. So until the day, we're not going to know how the flow of the agenda is going to be. So let's add it to the September meeting, and if necessary, like Councillor Smith says, bring your packed lunch.
And also, Chairman, did I hear right, you want an update on the APMG recommendations in 6 months' time from Simon Tagg?
Yeah, so that takes us to January, doesn't it? Yeah, okay.
And did I hear correct, it was the economic recovery and renewal and transformation, you're changing that from a quarterly?
Yeah, we're changing that from a quarterly update at the request of the Cabinet member, and that will go on as 6 months as well, so that again will be around the January time. Yeah, so that does take takes an item out on the November meeting. So going forward, if we did want to move something, we've got that, or add something in even, we've got the opportunity to do that. Are members happy with that? Yeah, okay, brilliant. Jonathan?
That's it then, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you very much. The date of the next meeting is Thursday the 16th of September, 10 o'clock. It says venue to be confirmed, but I'm guessing we'll be back in here. It might not be so warm. So I will see you all in September. Sorry?
Just one other thing. Myself and Ross have got to come forward with some ideas for working groups as well, which I think we need to present at the next meeting or something like that, just to be able to get the ball rolling in terms of options that might be available or something like that.
Okay, well, we have got the, we are looking at putting the bus inquiry day in at some stage in January. Daryl's just glared at me now. No. So that will be a working group before January. I know we've got the planning for that in November, I believe. So that's the date of the next meeting. Enjoy your summer safely. Stay COVID-free, all of you. And item number 9, exclusion of the public. We haven't got anything that we need to exclude them for. There isn't anybody else here. So thank you very much for your attendance today. We've actually finished at 11:55, which is really, really good. Thank you for coming today, and I'll look forward to seeing you all soon.